Prior to the suspension at 1 p.m., we were debating a bill, senators. We were debating a bill for an act to amend the National Crime Intelligence Agency Act to provide for the establishment of the National Crime Intelligence Agency Commission, its constitution, functions, and procedures, and matters connected therewith. I presume that we're all ready to commence. The chair recognizes Senator Honorable Michael Bonnet Ellis.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, it is a pleasure to once again stand in this place to contribute to the development of our beautiful Bahamas. Madam President, before I discuss the amendments to the National Crime Intelligence Act, I must first offer my condolences to the family, friends, neighbors, and colleagues of the late Darrell Miller. Mr. Miller was one of the most recognizable journalists in this country. We instantly recognized his voice and eagerly anticipated what he was about to say. His coverage of the Straw Market fire, commentary on our unfortunate national disasters, and of course, we will never forget his election results coverage. He made us look forward to his announcement that a candidate had received 0 votes. But Madam President, amidst the sadness we feel for his passing, for me there is a glimmer of hope that despite the fact that we have struggled with brazen daylight murders, we have not lost our sense of community. It was Mr. Miller's neighbors that noticed his absence. His neighbors were worried about his well-being. His neighbors missed him and reached out. His neighbors missed him and reached out and called the police. These, Madam President, reflect that we are still a community. And I hope that we go back to the days of the Bahamas where every community looked out for each other. Madam President, we are here today to debate the amendments to the National Intelligence Agency bill. This bill, Madam President, is an example of how this administration has changed their view on so many different things. In the House below, the government spoke with praise about the National Crime Intelligence Agency. But a mere 6 years ago, when the National Crime Intelligence Agency Act was passed, the bill was described as unconstitutional and unworkable. And the leader of the then opposition, now the Prime Minister, said that he would, upon coming to government, repeal those elements of the act that he deemed unconstitutional. Forgetting, however, that the National Crime Intelligence Agency was actually something created under the 2012 PLP administration. Except then it had no statutory body or regulation. The amendments to this bill, even the government conceded below, don't change much. And although Senator Pixtock in his contribution suggested that this bill creates training provisions and a centralized agency, those were all provisions that were contained in the 2019 Act. And this bill merely deals with the structure of the entity in term, and also creating a commission that would be responsible for the hiring of persons in the intelligence agency. Madam President, we don't dispute that there is a clear need for law enforcement agencies to have all the tools necessary to combat crime and protect its citizens. In fact, Madam President, plea deals are a part of those tools. But, Madam President, when plea deals are unduly lenient or even unduly harsh, the court retains the discretion to accept or reject a plea deal. And unduly lenient plea deals are harmful because they erode the public confidence in the administration of justice. The public, we must believe that there will be a proportional sentence to the offenses committed. And that is integral in our confidence in our national security. It is equally important, though, that the public's trust in government to ensure that the powers with relation to national security are not abused. And unfortunately, we are still waiting on this PLP government to demonstrate a commitment to transparency, accountability, and respect for individual privacy rights. At every opportunity, this administration has evaded oversight mechanisms. Despite their promises, they have not implemented the Freedom of Information Act or the Ombudsman Act. And we simply cannot forget the flip-flop on campaign finance legislation. It was an important part of their blueprint to swing votes, but now that they are in power, it turns out it's not a priority. The Procurement Act. 3 years ago, it was called unworkable and troublesome. And then this administration turned around and tabled almost identical legislation containing the same provisions that they called troublesome. They have flipped more than pancakes at a Sunday brunch. It is impossible to have confidence in this administration that flip-flops with breakneck speed. What happened to the days of so said, so done? How can we have confidence in an administration when we don't have any certainty about where they stand on a particular issue? It is extremely important that the public has confidence in the government. It is important to reduce our misery index. It is important for investment. It is important for democracy, and it is important for national security. By building trust and confidence in its approach to national security, a Bahamian government can create a more secure and more just society. Conversely, if a public believes that the government's powers are being misused, particularly in the name of national security, it will erode the trust in the government. And Madam President, we need to have every confidence that our law enforcement organizations can combat crime without any political interference. The recent surge in daylight murders in public areas in the Bahamas has heightened the pervasive fear of crime among residents. The brazenness of these recent attacks, often occurring in broad daylight and in previously considered safe spaces, has shattered the sense of security that many Bahamians once held. This fear has led to a palpable sense of unease and anxiety as people question their safety and the effectiveness of crime prevention measures. The perceived increase in violent crimes can have a significant impact on daily lives of Bahamians. We are more anxious about our surroundings, wondering who around us may have a target on their back. Even during the day, we feel a sense of unease in public places. The current crime situation has not only led to a sense of fear, but it has also led to numerous adverse travel advisories from our tourism partners. I have talked in this place about the things that can be implemented to strengthen our fight against crime, which include a holistic public health approach and sentencing guidelines. The men and women of our armed forces have unquestionably demonstrated a desire to improve their relationships with the community. You only have to look at their respective social media pages to see their positive community engagement and their efforts to see their positive community engagement. But their efforts to build trust and confidence are adversely affected by the lack of trust in the government. Madam President, the fight on crime requires the government to demonstrate a clear commitment to transparency and accountability. The PLP continues to fail to demonstrate their commitment to this, and they will continue to erode the public's trust in them. But Madam President, we deserve better. The global push for government transparency has gained significant momentum in recent years, fueled by advancements in technology, increased access to information, and a growing demand for accountability. Citizens worldwide are demanding greater openness from their governments. This push is driven by the belief that transparency fosters trust, improves governance, and ultimately leads to better decision making and making outcomes better for society. This is what we Bahamians deserve, and this administration appears unwilling to deliver it. Madam President, I have no objection to the proposed amendments of this bill. But as I take my seat, Madam President, October is a month dedicated to raising awareness about breast cancer, a disease that affects millions of people worldwide, including an increasing number of young women. By understanding more about this disease, we can empower ourselves and others to take proactive steps towards early detection and treatment. Breast Cancer Awareness Month is also an opportunity to honor those who have battled or are currently battling the disease. It is a time to celebrate their courage, resilience, and strength. Too many Bahamians are impacted and affected by this disease, but we must support one another and advocate for policies that promote breast health and improved access to quality care. Madam President, there is a monster Category 5 hurricane traveling, and I encourage our citizens and our residents, particularly those in the northern and northwest Bahamas, to be prepared. And we must keep our cousins in the state of Florida in our prayers as they prepare for a direct hit from Hurricane Milton. Madam President, it is always great to be back in this honorable chamber. And I'm glad that we have all been brought back here safely. May God bless you, and may God continue to bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
Thank you, Senator the Honorable Michael Bonnet Ellis, for your contribution. As many? As many? The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Maxine Seymour.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, if you would allow me, I would like to note that it's been an honor to serve with and alongside Senator Quinton Lightbourne over the past 3 years. And he's a good man, Madam President. And in fact, I have to tell you, the reality is that as humans, we're all imperfect. in some way. And had he indeed chosen his political affiliation more wisely, perhaps he would have been perfect. And we all know that as humans, we can't be perfect. So that is his one flaw. But beside that, I do wish him well in his role as the alternate executive director for the Caribbean at the Inter-American Development Bank. And of course, I also wish him well as he anticipates the birth of his daughter. So exciting. And I am confident that in his career and as a father, that he will indeed continue to excel. You know, he got his start at the one and only St. Anne's School. And I know some of us wish we could have attended, but only, former Senator Lightbourne and I had the opportunity to attend. So blue waves and 242 to the world. Madam President, you know, death is difficult. And I want to thank you for your sympathy extended to Rico and to me on the passing of my father-in-law, Cornell Seymour, and so many families across our archipelago buried and are preparing to bury their loved ones, including Rashad Flowers, who laid his father to rest. And so I do want to say condolences to him. I'm sure that was difficult. Madam President, the constituency of Seabreeze lost many residents in the past few weeks as well. You know, I mean, Killarney isn't the only place that lost people or has things going on. And so I wish to extend my sympathy to the families of Keith Smith, Frida Lenora Ferguson, Cornelius Cartwright, Belva Zonical, Carl Evans, and Madam President, to the family of Edith C. Lockhart, Madam President, who died at 101 years old a few weeks ago. And I had an opportunity to meet her on her 100th birthday last year, and it was such a privilege. And she was in sound mind, very sharp as a tack. And she shared stories of her upbringing in Ragged Island, her employment at Mademoiselle, and, you know, so fittingly so, she was funeralized at Christ the King Anglican Church here, but laid to rest beside her sister and her mom in Ragged Island. Madam President, I extend my deepest sympathy to the family, like you and others, of the late former Senator Naomi Ruth Seymour, you know, during this difficult time. And Senator Seymour, that's the original Senator Seymour in this place. I'm just, I don't know, but she's the original. I'm just a carbon copy. And so she was known for her dedication to public service and, of course, the development of her community and her legacy of leadership and her commitment to the Bahamian people won't be forgotten. And so my thoughts and prayers are with her, her family, the Free National Movement family, the Grand Bahama family, and all those who knew and loved her as we all navigate this period of loss. Finally, Madam President, we spoke to the inimitable Darrell Miller, veteran journalist, and my first boss back in 1996 when I began my journey as a young journalism intern at Love 97 in the newsroom. And for a 4-month stint, it fulfilled the requirements of my degree at the College of the Bahamas. And under his guidance, I really learned the craft of journalism. It was a fast-paced and demanding environment. At that time, many of the greats were there. And, you know, to name some, we had, Candia James was there, Marcellus Hall was in the newsroom, Anthony Newbold, and so many others were there at that time. And it really left an indelible mark on my approach to communication. His tenacity, skill, fearlessness, and influence in the field of journalism are unmatched. I think we all agree. Madam President, each year on the 5th day of October, we celebrate World Teachers' Day, a moment to honor the invaluable contributions of educators globally. Teachers play a pivotal role in shaping the future by nurturing the minds of our children and often making significant sacrifices along the way. And we know that many professionals have been accused of, just going in their respective fields for the money. But we all know that that's likely not why teachers teach, at least not in our country. And they dedicate countless hours to their students, and they put their students first. And so, as a daughter, wife, niece, and relative of many teachers, I've witnessed that commitment firsthand. And so I want to pause to salute those who are instrumental in guiding our children toward their full potential and creating a better tomorrow. Madam President, finally, as a former Brownie and Girl Guide, I am thrilled to continue the tradition with my 7-year-old daughter who recently moved from sunflowers to brownies. And this organization, which has been empowering Bahamian women since 1915, has made a lasting impact on our community. And now they're raising funds to complete the new Girl Guide headquarters on West Bay Street. So I have to say that right now I'm under the order of a very senior National Girl Guide leader who instructed me to bring cookie sales to the Senate. Yeah. And so, colleagues, solicitation shouldn't be abnormal to you in any way. I'd like you to know that cookies are just $54 a case, and your support will help this wonderful organization continue its mission. So do see me after the session. You know, don't go out through the back door. Don't change your number. Consider buying some cookies for your constituents or for those who you know. Madam President, today I want to say just a few words on the National Crime Intelligence Agency Amendment Bill 2024. And you know, this week we will observe World Mental Health Day, as we do each year on October 10, just to raise awareness about the importance of mental health and well-being. And in today's world, and my Senate colleagues spoke to it, where gun violence especially, and daily stress, inflation, and the lasting trauma from events, even like Hurricane Dorian, for example. I mean, we hear that a storm is traveling, and we don't know the impact that has on persons who may have survived Dorian. And so prioritizing mental health has never been more critical. And children and the general public in general are just witnessing unsettling events. Like we said, you know, crime is out of control to a point where there seem to be no rules anymore on the streets. And so it's essential that we come together as a society to support, to break the stigma, and to ensure that access to mental health care is there for all. So let me begin by acknowledging that this particular bill, and any bill that has to do with crime, you know, the objectives of enhancing our national security framework and strengthening our ability to combat crime are commendable. And we all understand the need to be vigilant and proactive when it comes to any threat to our nation's safety. However, there are two significant issues embedded in this bill that, if left unchecked, could undermine the very principles of democracy and the freedom that we strive to protect. So, Madam President, the first one I'd like to raise pertains to the concentration of power in the hands of the Prime Minister. Under the current structure, the Prime Minister is granted sweeping authority over intelligence operations, and there needs to be more oversight and accountability mechanisms in place. Madam President, while I have no doubt that any Prime Minister would act in the best intentions, it is dangerous to vest such far-reaching powers in just one individual. Our democracy is built on the principle of checks and balances. When it comes to matters as sensitive as national intelligence, this principle must be key to everything we do. And so, Madam President, we must ensure that decisions of this magnitude are made as collaboratively as possible, with input from other branches of government, or at the very least through an independent oversight body when it gets to certain levels and certain heights, as in this bill. And so no one individual, regardless of their office, I feel should have the unilateral ability to direct the flow or intelligence or decide how that information is utilized. And so that's something that I'm very cautious and concerned about. You know, a nation's security apparatus should not rest on the judgment of just the PM. It should be rooted in transparent, accountable systems that prevent potential abuses of power. Madam President, the other concerns I have is the removal of crime from certain sections, and the bill's provision allowing for intelligence gathering even when there may not be reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. And this can be a dangerous territory, as some before me have discussed. And so while we all agree of the importance of staying ahead of potential threats, we must draw a clear line between legitimate national security efforts and the protection of individual rights, specifically, Madam President, the right to privacy. And we all know we've stepped outside or, in a corner to take a call, and we've kept our voices at a certain volume, all because of the fact that we assume and want to assume that only the person on the other end is listening. Otherwise, we'd have the conversation out in the open where everyone could hear. And so, Madam President, I'm just concerned that we protect citizens' fundamental right to privacy, okay? Because we don't want to encourage on any level the misuse of power. And so we just cannot allow the intent for national security, on the premise of national security, to really become a cover for any sort of intrusive surveillance that infringes on people's freedoms. And so we have to have strict guidelines, and we have to adhere to them, because having strict guidelines is one thing, but implementation and execution of those guidelines is another. And so we have to make sure that intelligence is gathered only when there's a justified or tangible threat, okay, and not just based on speculation or the broad assumption that everyone could be a suspect. Because even though the bill talks about, for example, no sitting parliamentarian or no one who held an office within the past 5 years in a party, then, if you may be in parliament today, you may not have an office in your party, but you step out of parliament tomorrow, and then you become the director, of intelligence. And so we have to be very cautious, Madam President, in how we use this. And so we have to draw the line, Senator Pickstock, between protecting our nation, like I said, and preserving the rights of its citizens, okay? Because no matter what, national security should not come at the cost of, core democratic freedoms. And so we have to keep this balance in terms of security and liberty. And it's a delicate balance indeed, Madam President, but it is very crucial. And so we just have to manage this bill, and we have to make sure that, unchecked surveillance, and excessive executive power, that they're all managed, okay? And so, I urge, even in terms of those two that I raised, to really take another look, and if necessary, to consider another amendment that would really allow for more robust checks in terms of the power of the executive and intelligence gathering in general. Let's just make sure it's rooted in reasonable suspicion, because we're a small community. And even without formal intelligence gathering, we've seen in times past that, whatever it could be, and whatever the subject is, whether it's messages, whether it's voice notes, whatever it is, somehow become, accessible to all of us, even though we weren't the intended recipient of those messages. And so we have to really watch that. But this is important, on all levels, and we have to make sure that everybody who works in this area understands the importance of confidentiality and the importance of what they do. Because for sure we should be able to, for example, the Prime Minister should be able to write the Governor General tomorrow without that letter being seen by anyone other than who it was intended for. And so in general, we have to make sure that everybody in these places, technical officers, other people, they understand the importance of what they do, and they do their best to keep it to your chest. Like the old people say, no matter how tempting it is, no matter how juicy it seems, we have to keep it to our chest, because then the point of gathering intelligence will be moot if, we don't guard that information, really tightly and credibly, Madam President, because we don't want to know as a nation that when something happens and the police is going to have a check, a roadblock, that everybody knows, don't drive this route, don't drive that route, at this time, because there's going to be a roadblock. And that's just when, the same way when we get this intelligence, as a nation, we have to make sure that we keep it private and confidential, and that we understand the risk. So in recruiting, and, I heard my leader of opposition, I think, speak to it, that we must get the, most qualified, most experienced, most skilled, and the best to work in this agency, okay? We have to be really keen in our recruitment exercise, because there are very good people out there, and they understand the importance of safeguarding our national security, and also, really being transparent, accountable, and respecting individual rights. And so, Madam President, as I said, while I support the overarching aims of this bill, those are my two main concerns. And like I said, I'd like us to reconsider those in terms of future amendments, just to strike that balance. But of course, it's our duty to protect our country our sovereign nation. And so the bill in of itself definitely is a step forward, and anything that will help to combat crime is in the right direction. And so, Madam President, I am happy, mostly happy, to support this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your contribution, Senator Maxine Seymour. As many, the chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Reuben Ramming.
Thank you, Madam President, and welcome back to all. It's our first sitting since the recess, and I stand with all my colleagues in joining them in the salutations, condolences, and applauds for all the changes in the Senate, and from the clerk to our colleague and his social promotion in his personal life, and appreciation of his contributions in this House. And also want to congratulate all the other colleagues who would have been, whose adventure in governance has been expanded as a result of new territory, a different experience that they have been assigned to. And so I want to wish them all in good success and in the public interest, good success. I want to take the moment, you're welcome, my brother Christoph. I want to take a moment just to make an adjustment to the misspeak as related to the late Senator Naomi Roots Seymour. She'll be fertilized at the Pro-Cathedral Church of God, Pro-Cathedral Christ the King Anglican Church in Pioneers Way and East Atlantic Drive in Freeport, and that will be on Friday, the 18th of October at 10 a.m. And she will be laid in state here at the Senate on Thursday, the 17th, from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. for those to come and sign the Book of Condolences and show respect to the family. This bill on its face is, not even on its face, it's actually needed. I think we as a Bahamian people and a country that for the most part seems safe from war and even seemingly safe from a lot of the treacherous things that we see going around in the world, there is a very necessary need for us to step up and realize that you don't have to trouble for trouble to trouble you. So being a non-aggressive country who has a proud history of smooth political power transition and and our only real significant civil unrest we hold in high esteem, Burma Road, nevertheless, we must realize that we need to get with it before we lose ourselves. Yes, we would have seen, even from our financial services sector, and dealing with a lot of issues relating to blacklisting and other international money laundering related legislation, that we would have seen that even terrorists would have taken some time to see if they could find a way to even send money through our facilities to go somewhere else. Just like we would see with the international drug trade, the Bahamas is a transshipment point to get to the market, which is the United States, and yet we find ourselves still being victim to our geographical location. So anything that we can do to heighten our national and international security is very, very vital, because nowadays a terrorist doesn't have to visit by boat, plane, or train. They're just a cyber click away. I think recently we were seeing how our broadcasting corporation was hacked, and we all know how priceless the records of ZNS is. And if I remember correctly, it was through ransomware. And so we have significant needs on every level to protect our country at all levels. The issues with our border protection, the influx of migrants and from all over, and including that of business entities and those seeking to do business here to prevent anti-money laundering, et cetera, or being any part of any kind of international crime ring, whether directly or otherwise, having a mechanism that is able to see and even anticipate needs or reasons for us to protect ourselves and safeguard ourselves is very, very critical. If you go back in history and you look at many countries, I think one of them that stands out the most is Israel, who would have been surrounded by enemies on all three sides and had fought many, many battles like the Six-Day War, et cetera, have overcome many, many obstacles where people thought was insurmountable for them to do. Most of that, apart from the grace of God, is credited to having an excellent, some people say best in class in the world, intelligence agency, which had enabled them in many times, for example, when Syria had thought of, was nearing the point of having a nuclear weapon, they were able to successfully anticipate it, see it, establish it, and destroy it before that time. And the same thing happened with Saddam Hussein and his nuclear regimes. It is important as a country for its own safety to not wait until they're hit, but to also be able to practice preventative security as well. Because as we know, just as through September 11, virtually everything changed around our country as it relates to the movement of people, airport security, the demands placed on us for our ports and other points to properly safeguard it, all because somebody else decided to do something else. And so us having a top-notch agency is very, very vital. However, for these things to be done, there must be not only legislation, but substantial investment in financial capital and that of human capital and training to acquire the level of expertise. Any intelligence-driven or intelligence agency is not an end or be all of itself, because they are the one who are to bring actionable intelligence to the fore. And my understanding of the bill is it is to supersede that and even the reach of our Royal Bahamas Police Force, who has kept us reasonably safe thus far. So we need to see the seriousness behind this bill, especially in the upcoming budget, because preventative national security, as indicated by Senator Pickstock, which is very, very true, and really that's the success of it, requires vast amount of revenues. It actually literally requires almost a blank check in service, because the natural nature of our society in and of itself contradicts this necessary attempt. Why? Virtually every Bahamian, as small as we are, is but 5% away from anyone else in this country. I guarantee any one of us in our relationship want to reach anybody else. After calling 5 people in their relationship list, they will have some contact to the auntie, the uncle, the sister, or the mother of the person they're trying to reach. We are so closely knitted. One of those reasons is one of the things that I think those who support the Privy Council consider to be one of the main reasons for the necessity of the Privy Council. And that is because it allows a impartial, a final adjudication on a matter. And it is beneficial a lot to the investors who see us as a small country and sometimes tend to feel that there could be quid pro quo or some sort of reaching out to the justices who happen to live in the very same community. Everybody knows everybody. And it enables to have a court of appeal that it is being driven by persons who follow the Constitution but has no real direct link to the market. And so when we reach here with our intelligence agencies, we need to understand the gravity. If we really want to have one, not just on paper, but in actuality to accomplish the task, there are some things they need to consider. I'll give you an example. Mossad in and of itself, do you believe, or could you imagine how many pieces of information they process a day? I'm talking about tips and follow-throughs a day. And this was in probably the late 1980s. At that time, it was 10 million a day. Because you look into the proverbial needle in the haystack, following these leads, terrorist bombing, different type things, so you could invest it properly, to have the actionable intelligence. Then, as I mentioned with the Privy Council, there will be a need for outside individuals to be recruited to be successful in becoming the necessary maybe molds that you may need to have to gather information, because everybody is so close and known. Most police officers are known. And so this agency in and of itself must have the ability to do what it needs to do without transgressing our Bahamian civil rights under the Constitution. So with that said, we come to another important issue as relate to this whole setup. Because colloquially, one of the things that breed more importance to this at this time is the recent events in which we've been faced with. And when I say recent events, it's not that it's nothing new, but it has crescendo over the last few years and months, where our national security apparatus, all of them from the prison to the defense force and everything else, they strive on trust. The trust of the Bahamian people, because that is their greatest source of actionable intelligence. I remember the statement I made here in this Senate before, and I think later on it came to understanding that the Commissioner of Police could do all he wanted, the best he'd want with all the equipment, but the best he could probably do is like 49% in terms of, but when he has the public on his side, that adds the element of actionable intelligence, cooperation, prevention, and the things he needs to best help us. But for that to happen, there must be a fundamental understanding of trust. That is why we see the crime tipster hotline. For that to be effective, there's a phone call that have to go off somewhere into the state, scramble back and forward, a special code come to you so that people can feel comfortable in sharing information. Because there is nothing that happens in this country that someone else does not know about other than the perpetrator. Someone else always knows the truth. And so sadly, when that someone else have a problem, they want to cry out for justice and information, but they don't want to share what they know. So the agency needs to be very, very effective. I agree with what has been said, Senator Pisstock, and many of the other presenters, the Honorable Attorney General, as it relates to devices that helps necessitate this. Right now, as we well know, some of us, our grandchild and our 2-year-olds, could program our cell phone for us. I know of some grandparents literally wait until their 6-year-old come. Well, when he come home, he can put this in, he can send you my location, and the child program everything, you do all the phones, because the way technology is driven. We have CCTVs, and we need that. We need facial recognition on our CCTV systems, et cetera, et cetera. But CCTV systems is needed. Not going against it in any which way, but at the rate in which we photograph or videotape everything in this country, that far exceeds the capacity of CCTV systems and even get to the point that is actually invasive. When you begin to see dead bodies and carnage and stuff posted around and shared just for likes. But at this time and age, when you see even WhatsApp is being hacked, which was once the most secure platform that there is, it shows that us as a government really need to be further on the cutting edge. I say further because I have some insight into the capabilities of our Royal Bahamas Police Force as it is now. And honestly, they deserve a round of applause for what I've seen some of them being able to do and their capabilities and financial tasks, white collar, blue collar crime, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there is still always a higher level that I hope that this National Intelligence Agency is that one that will aspire to. That is why there's a need for the FBI, there's a need for CIA, there's a need for Interpol and different ones, because there's different levels. How they say, every new level there's a new devil that you need to work with. And right now, with the struggles that our police department is coming in dealing with, the biggest question is, do we need outside help to help us investigate things that involves the higher echelon of our society? I'm hoping that this will be a closed society that eventually, even though it may function under the police law, that all could migrate onto its own self as an entity so that it could have a level of latitude that transcends even the police force and certain things, although they can work with, it still transcends, to give them the opportunity and give us the faith and confidence that they can even investigate our law enforcement to ensure that trust and confidence remains within our system. It is such a dangerous situation that we're in right now, as mentioned, and I'm expanding on what the AG said. He mentioned about the gangs, but as we know colloquially, that the police does its vetting, as does the defense force, and they had been doing a pretty good job. But like I say, technology has changed, things have changed. These people have been educated on CSI, Matlock and Matlock Ole. You know, all that other thing, you know, and all these crime scenes, hey? And they get to the point that shows are becoming so sophisticated, so real, that these people are sitting getting all kind of education on evasions and stuff. And going to prison itself is getting a college degree in criminology. And I don't mean that in a positive sense. So we need to appreciate that even our current system of law enforcement has been infiltrated. You go to anybody on the street who knows and say, notwithstanding their vetting, that you found that a lot of the gangs had actually been conditioning their fellas so they can join the police force, so they could join the defense force, so they could join the prisons. So they join the government, both parties, left, right, so on, everybody. We know the truth of it. Watch when election comes. You see gangs on this side, gangs on that side. And they have infiltrated these things. And that is some of the things that also help them thwart a lot of the outreach and attempts of the police officers. And in some instances, you see relationships built between crime syndicates or gangs with certain police officers or defense force officers, or even some people in offices. Why? Because they're all either our children, our cousins, our this, someone who we grew up with. And so an agency like this could also help to vet and investigate, even on a higher level, I would hope, to ensure that we have persons who are committed to their country on that level and committed to the honor and the integrity of the institution in which they are a part of. I am motivated, even though I've spent probably about 18 years of my time volunteering with the police department since George Mackey time at the Foxville Police Department, to see even now that there are some senior police officers who still carry with them their recruit inspiration. You know, when I want to be a police force, and they still have that little I want to be a police force in them. They have not become so institutionalized that they forgot why they became a police. Despite their level of their stripes and how much bars they got, the divots on their shoulder, their khaki, you could still hear within their voices when you speak to them privately, you know, I'm proud to be police, I want to be. Then you can actually hear in some, I like the power. I like the power because I could disrupt you. I could hold you, I could give you a ticket, don't show up to court, and you still inconvenience. You know, but the majority of our police officers are good. But the problem we have is when mistrust enter into the mix by anything and all around. And this is what's going to cause, there's some of the tension and the question that people have in society about anything. And when the advent of this bill first started, it started off on the wrong footing. And then it got the branding and the name of the spy bill, and it created a negative image around the whole thing. But I'm hoping that we could find a way to polish this up, because we really need to be able to infiltrate those foreign gangs that are out there, to infiltrate the local gangs that are out there, infiltrate those organizations who clad themselves in professional corporate structures, but yet are here to the detriment of our country. And we have had a few, which I could name, to infiltrate those organizations who maybe even innocently or otherwise could find themselves actually involved in terrorism, but not knowing, simply because they think they have somebody who's a good benefactor. I think those are some of the things that was raised when we passed the legislation as relate to setting up non-profit organizations, because they too tend to be very vulnerable for things that possibly could be money laundering or even indirectly supportive of these things. If these things are real, and we've been passing legislations over the years to try bolster our people around it, it is only logical that we should have an entity that even transcends the police force that could look into these things to anticipate and help. I'm talking about even going as far as working with the Central Bank of the Bahamas on sensitive levels, because things like this can't be hit or miss. You got to hit. A level like this, you got to be accurate with what you need to do, because corporate interests, people's names, people's reputations, everything is at stake if you get it wrong. We've seen in our country over and over again where we have taken benevolence from other nations only to find out in the computer or the televisions they had back doors in them. This is what the agencies like this supposed to be able to do and to be able to assess. So the level of technical knowledge and expertise transcends even that I really have to say that may exist even now in our country. We just saw with Israel using the pages and the walkie-talkies to deal with the terrorists. I have no problem with the terrorists, but it says something.
You have no problem with
I have no problem with terrorists being dealt with in any which way. I have no problem with that happening, brother. If that's your enemy and you got to find a way to deal with it, that's your thing. I ain't getting in that. I have no problem deal with it because you know. Why I say that? Because if somebody's coming against the Bahamas and we know for sure, I'm not worrying if the U.S. agree with it. We protect ourselves. That's the end of the story. But if things like this is happening in the world where a country is not playing checkers, they're playing chess, that they can plan a move 20 years out for when the time they need it, where are we now as a country if we can't bolster ourselves and realize that the Bahamas, though neutral in terms of violence, though peaceful politically, though not an aggressive militarized country, is yet still a gem and a strategic place on the map between enemies. Do you remember how close we were with the matter with the Cuban Missile Crisis between two giants? Exactly, and it's not a game. When the Bible says there's nothing new on it, there's not a game. And the two who fighting no more than us, and we still there beating drum and John Canoe, and we were literally between nuclear powers, that if it wasn't for diplomatic back channels, where we would have been. So we need to know if someone coming cruising through our waters and have nuclear contraband or carrying certain type of technology. We need to know. We may not be there yet, but neither was Israel. Neither was the CIA, but we need to start somewhere a long time. But trust is the #1 issue when it comes down to dealing with this. Then we need to remember that we are a country of laws. When we give people powers, we need to make sure that they abide by these powers and ensure that what is done is exactly according to the law with punishment. That is very, very critical. We can't just put it on the book. I want to see where the penalties will be for persons who transgress these protocols. And I think that will help more in projecting to the public some of the things that may give them peace, that there won't be a rogue officer who pull files and do certain things. You remember there were times we know it's wrong for you to be able to go into people NIB's file and go into BC and get people electrical bills and make them public and stuff. But we saw in political campaigns where it happened before. You see, right now our biggest problem with the country is in enforcement. And I think that was said in here today. You could pass the best laws with the best intent, but with bad enforcement is ruin. And so we need to make sure that the law is enforced. And Teddy Roosevelt said, speak softly and carry that big stick. Because without that big stick, those officers or agents won't know when they got to straighten up and fly right. So we need to be very, very careful of that. I think despite all the many things that are allegations yet embarrassing to our national security right now, one of the main things is, notwithstanding, we see the arm of our judiciary at least delving into it and taking it serious, which adds a degree of trust. But we have been undermined, our national security have been undermined in the eyes of the people too much. Too much. And somehow this needs to stop. It must also start with us as legislators. Because how we could expect to believe that this, although it was stated that it will not be politically driven, when we see a lot of things that make us feel uncomfortable as society, as we ain't sure. Because the impression is that there's ability to slow down the road for one, speed up the road for next or erase the road for someone else. We see this in too many examples. Let me give you one example. Right now, if you fall behind in your real property tax, the government could use the legislation to go in your house, go to your bank without your permission, tell the bank, listen, give us our little thing, and put that on the AG's mortgage. Yeah. Oh, you can't. Oh, I'm sorry. He graduated. I'm sorry. The rest of us is mortgage, and the government could go ahead and do that. But yet, for years and years now, we have another entity that rescued Bank of the Bahamas called Resolve, that holds. It's still hundreds of million, over 200 million. How much it is now? What's it down to? It's under 100 million left, and I guarantee. How many persons asset, and that could be, I like to hear that, have yet to be confiscated to satisfy the debt? So people begin to feel, even with the process with the mortgage and recently the confiscation of property to pay off taxes, it began to give the impression to people that it was happening for some, but it ain't happening for others. All things must be equal when it comes to being under the law, and enforcement should be always impartial. You follow the evidence and you let it fall where it may. And when you do that, society can feel more comfortable. We find that even with our judiciary, which the AG alluded to, and I'm glad he made his presentation the way he did, because it helps people to understand that, listen, these things aren't standalone. See, justice is a big anchor chain that holds the ship of a state called the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And you can get the judiciary right, but if you have enforcement wrong, you have no chain. Any link that breaks is a chain. If law enforcement breaks down, you have a break in the chain, and it's going to interrupt that. If legislation don't keep up with the nature of crime as it represents now, you just by ignorance, allowed crime to go untested because legislation hadn't caught up with the new method and styles of criminology in the country right now. So there's a full link. So now when we're talking about the specialists in the police force, who we have two of, the forensic pathologists, if there aren't enough, that's going to help the backlog. And when there's a backlog, that's going to make a problem, because now that is going to increase the odds, Madam President, of victim intimidation. It's going to increase the odds of victim mortality, even them being killed or harmed by the perpetrators. And it also increased the time for also a different nature of victim mortality, witness mortality, where the witness die. And all of this erodes justice in and of itself. So the AG could start fixing his link of the chain, showing in as much as attorneys as he can, and when they get right, they go to a corporate job, and then you got to start all over again. But the whole system must work regardless. The whole system, you got to hire Michael? I remember. Say no more. You know, no, it got to work, and it got to start. And it got to start from the bedroom to the courtroom, meaning from your children and your family all the way to the courtroom. We must all be a part of this justice system. All right? And then when we get to the point, we can't even find ourselves where people begin to mistrust the government and the laws. All right? You see exactly when we started with certain things at the Procurement Act. The simple issue we brought up again, obey the law until it's changed. Oh, we ain't worrying about that because we can change it. Well, it took you almost a year and a half or plus to change it, so you want to obey the law for a year and a half. And then when you bring in a new one, are we yet following that new one yet to a T? Fully? So we have a problem when we seem to demonstrate that we can legislate, but we ain't got to participate in the same laws that we legislate. We as a people, we all must be consistent in following the rules of the law so that we can ethically, morally, and legally demand that the law applies where it applies for everybody else. One of the other egregious things I saw, even as related to that, and people watch these things, you know, I call it the tale of two lookalikes, you know, where you have one person on trial for one thing in the court, and you have the other one confessing in court, but he gets to go, but he confessed to virtually almost a similar same thing. But one still getting drilled, the other one, okay, just resign from that and go. That's duplicitous. He committed. He confessed it on the record in court. Where's the same level of investigation and follow through? And even if it's only one count, where's that from that individuals? But he got to still sit up there and be honorable. See, we can't be speaking a double-minded man. That's what they say, unstable and. And this is not hate. This is just simply saying is what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I gave an example before, and this is what I believe in law. I gave the example before of Nighty Nose. I have no love for Nighty Nose. He's a drug dealer, and I know what drugs do to our children, our country, and our industriousness when we get that quick, fast money, hooking and doing all kinds of things. Right now, our country has not recovered from the drug times. All right? But when a man has one more action in court, and I heard you mention it about the young fellow who got last death penalty person, Mitchell. All right? If you had one more action, I don't have to like you. I will stand up for your right to have your last action, even if I'm sitting there hoping you fail it. Because why? When it's my time or my child time, and if he have one more opportunity to get his freedom or to save his life, he deserves it. Why? We are entitled to every benefit and every appropriate penalty under the law. That's how law works. That's why justice has a blindfold. That's why justice have a scale. That's why there's a thing called equitability before the court. You can't come before the court unless you get clean hands. And this implies to this very agency where people need to trust the police force. Right now, I'm looking at this as a start. Because if you have on this level, obviously you got to recruit from our police department. That's a given. But right now, the credibility of our police department sadly is short. And I'm willing to help and work to do everything I can to build it up because that is needed. And there are too many good cops out there for them to be sullied by anything, whether accusation or reality. Because when the police come running towards me with a gun in his hand, I believe he's pointing at the gun at the person who's about to harm me. Not I should duck because he's coming at me who ain't do nothing. When I see a police car light through my bedroom curtains, I rest better. I say, oh, they checking on me. I don't want to feel that I'm going to get robbed or somebody's scoping me out to see if I'm going to be carrying deposits or something. I feel good that, you know what, there may not be no crime on my street because those lights are flashing through my street and people don't know where the police are. So it is very critical that we learn how to deal with these things. My colleague and leader of opposition business, Senator Darren Hatfield, was speaking about the death penalty, what was responded to with some cynicism. But I was looking at his statistics, and I do agree with him, the value of a life for a life. I do believe in that. Simple as that. Unless you are somebody die in the protection of somebody else or in self-defense, you see what I'm saying? It's a life for a life. Your life ain't no more important than mine. It's as simple as that. The Privy Council, I'm not even getting it, I'm just stating that fact. But he spoke about since the time of the last execution. I just want to show you some numbers, you know, because people say, one thing he mentioned, he wasn't questioning, he just was stating the fact that some people say he's a deterrent, he said that don't matter to him, left or right. Some people say, well, do that, he's speaking his principle behind it. But let me show you what the numbers look like here now. So, in 2000, right, the high in terms of murder was 74. Down to, it wasn't until 2007 that it rose up again to 78. So in other words, right after the hanging in 2000, it dropped down to 43 it stayed to 52 was the highest, 50, and then the next year 44, and then 2005, 52. The highest it went back up to, and must be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6+ years, was much lower than that. But not only that, check this out, because many times, you know, I think I paused there because we have to give thanks for our surgeons, ambulance technicians, even people who took the time to respond quickly to get help to persons. Because if our medical technicians and stuff wasn't there, y'all want to see murder numbers? If we factor in the many people who got saved in the hospital and it ended up just being grievous harm or something else, it will blow your mind. So thank God for our doctors, our nurses, our medical technicians, our ambulance drivers, and everything else, because they have been lifesavers in this country, and I thank God for them. But then let's look at this other category, because some of us, I think attempted murder is spared by murder by luck or by the grace of God, because the intent was to murder. The intent was to murder, all right? So let's not dismiss that, but here it is. Right after the hanging, when there was 74 murders, there was also, that same year, 12 attempted murders. Now, in 2001, the 12 went down to 9. In 2002, attempted murders went down to 9. In 2003, 0. In 2004, 0. In 2005, 0. In 2006, 0. In 2007, 7, still less than 12. In 2008, 6. In 2009, 5. In 2010, 11. It took 11 years for even the attempted murder to get back to where attempted murder was the year of the hanging. Yeah. Then let's take a look at this one, because there's another one, you know, you maybe the heat of passion, you decide to beat up somebody, boyfriend, you fall, trip, you break your ankle, and knock your head off. That's called manslaughter. And that same 2000, when the hanging was, there was 2 manslaughter. In 2001, there was 1. In 2002, there was 1. In 2003, there would have been 3. Then going right back down to 2 in 2004, 2 in 2005, 1 in 2006. Now, I wouldn't get through all the rest because I ain't interested in alarm. I just want to show you whether you consider anecdotal or what. The truth is, whatever message happened, and the only thing we know happened in 2000 was that last hanging. Some people got the message. Somewhere along the line, some people got, you know why they got the message? Because, hey, rape is not a capital offense in terms of the hanging. It was 101 rapes in 2000, and in 2001 it went up to 111. In 2002 it went up into 140. In 2003 it did drop to 140. A lot of the other indices, sexual assaults, keep moving. But boy, when it comes down to that thing that is murder, could be murder, or attempted murder, that dropped like a rock. And only I can say in honor of Darrell Miller, I report. You decide whether it's effective enough or whether we should put our political phobias aside and put it to the people of a referendum and say, listen here, what y'all want us to do about this? And if you all want this enshrined in the Constitution under whatever appropriate structure it needs to be, you vote on it. If not, live with it. I believe some things you just put to the Constitution. I mean, just put it to the people. But you know, we so scared of the historical, would say to be prophetic, that if you lose a referendum, you lose the election. It seems as if there's not much of a political will to do what I think is right in the eyes of the country. There are things you must get there and put it to the people. And then when you put it to the people, and if they say no, your hands clean. And then don't turn around and say you don't have any horse in the race. Let a referendum be a referendum. So in summary, Madam President, I am glad for the steps, although it was shaky at first. I'm saddened that the shakiness may still have a bad taste as we progress this. I consider this infantile, not as an insult, infantile in the context of where I think we need to grow this for true national sovereignty protection, national security. I haven't even reached internal yet. And internal national security. We do need to have an agency, whereas if necessary, we could bring in people who are invisible to our people to be able to do the infiltration that we need. We need to spend the big money on training our people on the highest level. Send them to Israel 6 years, learning some of that. CIA learning some of that. This way, learning some of that. We need to start hiring, do what the big Fortune 500 companies does. If you hack into, you know what the banks do? You hack into my bank and you break that security, you don't go into jail. Keep that building. Come, you're going to work with us. You're going to secure this system for us. Because if you're smart enough to break it, you're smart enough to show it. We have Rhodes Scholars all over this country. We need to bring the best of the best. And unfortunately, every government from here on now can't be cheap when it comes to this if they really believe this is supposed to tackle something that is a clear and present danger to our country. So with that, Madam President, I support the intent that is going on here, and I encourage us to do our best to step up more and to ensure that every link in the chain of our justice system get the money and the resources that they need to function as one strong anchor to the ship of a state called the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. With that, I rest.
Thank you for your contribution, Senator the Honorable Reuben Raming. As many? Chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Ryan Pinder.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just for a brief wrap-up, I want to thank both my colleagues on this side as well as my colleagues on the other side for their debate and their cooperation and their support for the National Crime Intelligence Agency Amendment Bill 2024. Certainly, Madam President, it's a non-controversial piece of legislation, but it certainly allows, as we have heard today, members in this place to speak on their various opinions about crime prevention, about what is needed from beginning to end, and I thank them for their support. I think there was one issue that was raised by Senator Seymour in her criticism of the bill, in that she indicated that there was too much authority being vested in the Prime Minister. And I would point Senator Seymour to the 5th schedule, where in no fewer than 4 instances, the 5th schedule sets out the conditions of and the constitution and procedures of the National Intelligence Agency Commission. So this is really the schedule that matters for the purposes of appointing the commission and how they are to function. And in no fewer than 4 places in that schedule, it is very clear that the appointments are made, yes, by the Prime Minister after consultation has been had with the Leader of the Opposition, which I might remind the good senator. I might remind the good senator that many that sit on this side sit after consultation with the Leader of the Opposition. I also note, Madam President, that the Judicial and Legal Services Commission sits on the appointment after consultation with the Leader of the Opposition. So there are instances at the highest level of appointments in this government, in any government, Madam President, where that appointment is done by the Prime Minister after consultation with the Leader of the Opposition. So there is nothing afoul. In fact, it lines right in line with how governance in this country is traditionally done. Now, I'm happy to extend. But it's the truth. I'm happy to extend other examples to the good senator, so we can understand more how appointments are done throughout the central government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. But having made that point, Madam President, I so move for the second reading of a bill for an act to amend the National Crime Intelligence Agency Act to provide for the establishment of the National Crime Intelligence Agency Commission, its constitution, functions, and procedures, and for matters connected therewith.
The Senators, it has been moved and seconded. Senators, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a second time and committed. A bill for an act to amend the National Crime Intelligence Agency Act to provide for the establishment of the National Crime Intelligence Agency Commission, its constitution, functions and procedures, and for matters connected therewith. As many as in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. Order that the bill be read for a second time and committed.
A bill for an act to amend the National Crime Intelligence Agency Act to provide for the establishment of the National Crime Intelligence Agency Commission, its constitution, functions, and procedures, and for matters connected therewith.
For the second reading of bills, the chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Ryan Pinder.
Thank you, Madam President. And good afternoon, colleagues. I stand to read for the second time a bill for an act to amend the Bridge Authority Act. Madam President, this is a short bill, but it is an important piece of legislation, and especially for those who either live in, represent, or seek to represent Family Island communities in particular, Madam President, but certainly it is a piece of legislation that is important for infrastructure throughout our archipelago. So to give you a little background on the reason for this piece of legislation and what it accomplishes, Madam President, the Bridge Authority Act, and we know the Bridge Authority as being the designated authority in law for the management of the Paradise Island Bridge, and that management includes the upkeep, collecting the tolls, ensuring the tolls are used for the purposes of bridge upkeep, and I think that certainly since the establishment of the Bridge Authority and the management of the Paradise Island Bridge, I think it's been a successful endeavor by central government and seems to work appropriately. However, Madam President, the Bridge Authority Act, by its terms, are limited to bridges in Nassau, so effectively limited to the management of the Paradise Island Bridge. And for those in the Family Islands, and those living and representing the Family Islands, in particular, although I only highlight it because it is my heritage, but particularly those who live in North and Central Eleuthera with the Glass Windows Bridge. But the same issues are in existence in Andros, where down by the base, there is a bridge that is in severe disrepair that needs in and of itself significant either rebuilding or remediation efforts in that bridge. But we also know of the Glass Windows Bridge. And we know in the Glass Windows Bridge, Madam President, that at times it is a danger to cross. When you have a raging ocean sea from the north, for all of us mariners, and it comes and it breaks over, it in fact, Madam President, if you are not careful, it will knock vehicles off the bridge and into the ocean. I've seen it a few times. And it's a very dangerous crossing when it's raging from the north. Now, Madam President, not only is it dangerous to cross, but it is also damaging to the basic infrastructure of the bridge. And for those who have been to Eleuthera would know that to traverse between the north and south of the bridge, Gregorytown South, that's the only way to cross. And at times, and multiple times, because of the severe rage, it has knocked the bridge and shifted the bridge off its access to where now you either could only cross on one lane or it's dangerous to cross at all until it has been remediated. And part of the challenge is, and this isn't a new occurrence, Madam President, and again, I speak using the Glass Windows Bridge as an example, but this is the case throughout our archipelago when it comes to infrastructure and certainly bridge infrastructure. To replace the glass windows bridge by a central government initiative is highly cost prohibitive, and probably, I think, the latest estimates to the tune of $40 to $50 million is the basic amount. I've seen some quotes, actually, Madam President, of upwards of $100 million to build a new glass windows bridge in a way that it is safe to traverse, and it is not subject to being knocked off its axes or otherwise by the severe weather. And so that is one of the historically challenges that governments have faced is, I have to raise $50 million for a bridge in Eleuthera, and then I probably have to raise another $50 million for bridges in Andros, another $50 million for bridges throughout other parts of the family of islands. We are now amending the Bridge Authority Act by way of this Bridge Authority Amendment Bill 2024 to make it clear that the scope of application of the Bridge Authority goes now beyond Nassau and goes to any area so designated by the minister by an order. And the reason why that's important, because I know some people will say, well, why don't the government just fix it, right? And one thing that when you utilize an established authority with an established revenue stream and an established independent governance structure that can be audited, that can be vetted, is that you now have a framework to allow for different types of financing alternatives to do this important infrastructure work. And so you would be able to do private PPPs, public-private partnerships, and you would also be able to do creative loan financing because you have the basis in an authority without it having to go through the hoops that we know of through the central government system. And so that's a very important reason for this amendment. And I can tell you that the two bridges I mentioned, Madam President, are first and foremost to be either rebuilt or rehabilitated through this framework of PPPs and creative financing by utilizing the Bridge Authority, which is the baseline for this amendment. It also, the second part of the amendment, just so you would know, Madam President, would allow for property to be owned and held by the Bridge Authority, which is an important component when you're looking at creative financing alternatives. So, Madam President, it's a small piece of legislation, but it's not inconsequential. It's a very important piece of legislation, and I'm going to look at the eyes of the residents of Eleuthera and promise and tell you that by way of this amendment, we will be rebuilding the glass windows bridge into a modern passage across from the north to the south with a touristic element, an element where Bahamians can capitalize on the rebuild efforts by having a touristic destination. Because right now, Madam President, when tourists come to see the glass window bridge, they dangerously park on the side of the road. They get out of their cars, and they have to, because it's all they can do, walk in the middle of the road to go see the experience. This needs to be a better thing. We need to develop, as part of the rebuild, a safe touristic component. And I've seen the plans, Senator. I've seen them. I know it's going to happen. It's been budgeted. We have our consultant in place. We're finalizing that agreement. Residents of Eleuthera, we got you. Madam President, I now move for the second reading of a bill for an act to amend the Bridge Authority Act. Yes, sir. Thank you. Yes,
Thank you for your contribution, Senator the Honorable Ryan Pinder. Is there a second? The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Randy Rowe.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I rise to second the amendment. But before I get started, Madam President, with your leave, I wish to express my condolences, join my other colleagues in expressing my condolences to my colleague, Ms. Seymour, on the passing of her father-in-law, and the family of good brother who would have passed, and of course Rashad Flowers on the passing of your father. May you guys be comforted in this time. I also wish to express condolences to my family in Bimini. Just yesterday they buried my uncle Cedric, and so I wish to extend condolences to them as well, Madam President. I also, with your leave, would like to congratulate my brother, my fraternity brother, friend and colleague in the name of Quentin Lightburn. I'm proud of him. I've seen his progress over the years. We've done a lot together. We were vice chairmen, we were a leadership council, and now he's moved on to even a bigger post, and I too have served overseas, and so I tell him to embrace the moment, to make the most out of it, but most important, Madam President, to build relationships. Relationships being the new currency, and so I'm happy and I'm sure that he will do just that. Madam President, I'm honored, first of all, to also say my thank you to the Honorable Prime Minister, who through him and the Cabinet of the Bahamas, I was appointed. I can get to that. I was appointed on July 1st as the Executive Chairman of the Consumer Protection Commission. This role, Madam President, carries immense responsibility and presents a vital opportunity to affect meaningful change in the lives of our citizens. And so for that, I'm grateful. I want to take this opportunity, Madam President, to also express my heartfelt gratitude to my friend and brother, former Deputy Prime Minister I. Chester Cooper, Minister of Tourism, Investment and Aviation, for his guidance over the past 3 years, Madam President, has been invaluable, equipping me with the knowledge and experience necessary for this important position. With this strong foundation, Madam President, I am eager to embrace the new challenges and responsibilities that lie ahead. Madam President, I also wish to extend my thanks to my childhood brother and friend, the Honorable Ryan Pinder, for his guidance, throughout this process, and he's been very good and certainly has helped me along the way, Madam President, and I thank him for that. And also, Madam President, I wish to also thank my brother and friend and my new boss, Senator the Honorable Michael Alcides, for allowing me this opportunity that he has given me. I promise, Madam President, I promise him that I will deal with it and I will approach this with the same energy that I have with the downtown. And so for that, I'm thankful as well, Madam President. We'll get there. As I step into this role, Madam President, I am particularly excited to engage in the debate surrounding the recent amendments that will empower the Bridge Authority, a critical component of our nation's infrastructure. This amendment, Madam President, signifies the continued commitment of the Davis administration to enhance the quality of life for our citizens. Madam President, with the passage of the Bridge Authority Amendment Bill, it will empower the Bridge Authority to own, manage, operate, and maintain bridges in the country. This landmark decision marks a monumental step forward in infrastructure management, reflecting a collective commitment to ensuring the safety and functionality of our bridges. Madam President, in my role as Consumer Protection Commission, I have become acutely aware of the vital need for our people, our consumers, Madam President, to have a champion advocating for their rights and amplifying their voices. The recently amended Consumer Protection Act, Madam President, 2023, was designed to incorporate fundamental international consumer rights, marking them accessible and understandable for all Bahamians. Madam President, one of the 8 internationally recognized consumer rights is the right to safety. It is in this context in mind that I wholeheartedly support these amendments. As we strive for urbanization and progressive consumer advocacy, we must acknowledge that such growth cannot occur in isolation. The Bahamas requires a robust infrastructure, clean water, sewage systems, reliable roads, electricity, telecommunication, and yes, Madam President, bridges. And these are things that this Davis administration will bring to the Bahamian people. Madam President, let me illustrate the importance of this amendment with a vivid image. Picture yourself, Madam President, as one of the 7,500 employees at Atlantis Resort, or one of the 7,000 plus motorists who rely on the Paradise Island Bridge daily. Imagine approaching East Bay Street, only to find that both bridges have vanished into thin air. What would you do? The impact of such a loss would be staggering, both for individuals and for the economy. Madam President, bridges, while often taken for granted, are a marvel of engineering that are critical for our daily lives and industries worldwide. Their maintenance are not just an obligation, but a necessity. And we must entrust the responsibility of our bridges to an entity that is committed to corporate responsibility and to safeguarding human rights in its operation and supply chain. Reflecting on our political history, Madam President, I am reminded of former Prime Minister Perry Christie's assertion back in 1997 when he campaigned for leadership of the Progressive Liberal Party, calling himself the bridge to the future. Today, as we consider our infrastructure, we must embrace the same vision. This legislation, Madam President, gives the Bridge Authority power to employ creativity in the management of these structures throughout the country. It empowers them to effectively manage the infrastructure and maintain these bridges. Bridges set examples, not merely structures. They are reflections of a government's commitment to its citizens. Madam President, with the Bridge Authority's expanded statutory responsibilities, including maintenance and funding decisions, it is imperative that the authority assumes legal ownership of the bridges and associated land. This aligns with the straightforward amendments proposed today, empowering the authority to manage these essential structures effectively. Madam President, neglecting our bridges can lead to significantly higher costs for the government in the future compared to the investment made in timely maintenance. When we defer necessary repairs, the expense can escalate drastically, far surpassing those of proactive upkeep. I'm reminded, Madam President, of the downtown revitalization project that I spearheaded when I constantly advocated for the mantra of improve or remove. While some heeded that call, the urgency truly became apparent with the unfortunate collapse of the historic Reinhardt Hotel. Had it been properly maintained, Madam President, it could have become a treasured attraction for both locals and tourists, enriching our cultural landscape. Imagine the scenario. Many buildings in downtown have faced demolition, including significant historical structures. If we had prioritized the maintenance, we could have preserved these landmarks for future generations. This serves, Madam President, as a powerful reminder that investing in our infrastructure is not just about the present. It's about safeguarding our future and ensuring that history is not lost, but celebrated. Investing in the maintenance and preservation of our infrastructure can subsequently extend the lifespan of buildings, roads, and bridges, helping us to avoid costly major overhauls down the line. Additionally, focusing on the repair and enhancement of our transportation system creates immediate employment opportunities while setting the stage for sustainable economic growth. It is my firm belief, Madam President, that no responsible person can underestimate the significance of this amendment for the advancement of consumer rights in the Bahamas. Everyone knows that any bridge must be regularly inspected, maintained to prevent significant failures. Madam President, recent reports in our local daily highlighted that we have approximately 40 bridges across the Bahamas, with 17 categorized as major structures. This revelation underscores the pressing need for action. The Consumer Protection Commission aligns itself with the shift away from a Nassau-centric approach, extending our focus across the entire archipelago. As they say, all are we as one. Madam President, this amendment empowers the Bridge Authority to tackle the urgent issues facing many of our bridges, particularly in our family islands, including, as the good AG said, Eleuthera, Andros, and Exuma, where infrastructure needs require immediate attention. Constructing infrastructure is not enough. A framework to maintain projects to the highest standard is also necessary. Taxpayer dollars spent on infrastructure must be protected, ensuring that our bridges remain safe and functional for all generations to come. Madam President, the Honorable Clay Sweeting, Minister of Works and Family Island Affairs, has gone on record emphasizing that the Bridge Authority's ability to ensure all bridges in the country are managed effectively is critical as the government continues to invest in infrastructure development. I wholeheartedly concur with Minister Sweeting, and I look forward to seeing the Bridge Authority resolve the issues plaguing the industry, including the lack of infrastructural investments in ongoing maintenance to avoid deterioration of bridges. Madam President, as both Executive Chairman of Consumer Protection Commission and a member of the Senate, I am uniquely positioned to advocate for the passage of this bill. It represents a fundamental step forward towards addressing and fulfilling a basic need for consumers. Newly constructed bridges will not only improve connectivity across our islands, but will also enhance safety, mobility, and overall quality of life for countless residents, motorists, and pedestrians. The Bridge Authority has demonstrated its capabilities to tackle this significant task, showing a commitment to long-term strategies focused on maintaining and improving bridge infrastructure, coordinating necessary funding for ongoing and future maintenance efforts, ensuring access to appropriate resources, peoples, tools, and equipments for timely maintenance, implementing effective processes to complete projects on a schedule and within budget. My fellow senators, Madam President, indeed the responsibilities proposed in these amendments are rightfully vested in the Bridge Authority. Managing a bridge project is no small feat. It requires a dedicated balance of technical knowledge, managerial skills, and effective communication among various stakeholders. Madam President, The next time you cross a bridge, take a moment to appreciate the dedication and expertise of the professionals working tirelessly behind the scenes to ensure our safety and connectivity. The Bridge Authority is not just responsible for infrastructure. They are guardians of our journey and, by extension, our future. When passed, these amendments will solidify our role as protectors of public safety and champions of consumer rights in the Bahamas, all while enhancing the experience of traversing our landscape. With these few words, Madam President, I support the amendment, and thank you. Appreciate it.
Well done. Where we sending you?
Thank you for your
The Berry Islands. How about that?
thank you for your contribution, Senator the Honorable Randy Roll. Second. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a second time and committed. A bill for an act to amend the Bridge Authority. As many? The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Darren Henfield.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. I rise briefly to contribute to the bill before us. Madam President, the Bridge Authority is a body corporate established by an act of Parliament during the Ingram administration of 1998 to oversee the Paradise Island Bridge, you know, and the Sydney Poitier Bridge. You know, when we say what we've done, we get blowback, and most of the time people in here say we haven't done anything. so not any opportunity we should say what we've done. And Prime Minister Ingram led that administration which established the authority. Right? All can agree that from the time of its inception, the authority has proven its worth and value to the Bahamian people. Arguably, the authority has done reasonably well over the years in keeping the Paradise Island and the Sydney Poitier bridges in relatively good state of repairs. The quasi-government Bridge Authority is responsible for the oversight, operations, and maintenance of bridges while managing the revenues to make us a viable and a self-sustaining corporate entity. Madam President, the amendments we make to the Bridge Authority Act today will cause the authority to be vested with powers to acquire, to own, to construct, to manage, to maintain and operate any bridge as designated by the Minister by order published in the Gazette. The amendment to Section 5 by the insertion of the new Section 5A provides that all interests acquired or held by the government of the Bahamas and any property pertinent to and necessary for the construction and use of any bridge specified in paragraphs D and E of Section 4 of the Principal Act 2:1 rest in and be held by the Bridge Authority or be transferred by the government of the Bahamas to the Bridge Authority for the construction and use thereof. Simply put, any bridge anywhere in the Bahamas that belongs to the government can now go to the authority on order by the minister, and he will lay that out in a gazette. It then becomes law or lawful to do so. Madam President, the government believes that the amendments will enable the Bridge Authority to expand its mandate to construct, to own, manage, and operate and maintain any bridge throughout the Bahamas. Moreover, with the government's approval, this responsibility can be extended to any bridge deemed essential, ensuring that we do not merely construct but also maintain our assets to the highest standards. Madam President, the move of the bill in the other place, the Honourable Minister of Works and Family Island Affairs, place meeting indicated that there are 40 bridges throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas to date. Today, toll booths exist on the Sidney Poitier Bridge only at the time. In March 1998, the Bridge Authority issued a $28 million bond to cover the cost of repairing the first bridge and building the second bridge. Madam President, the government assures us that no tolls will be exacted from the Bahamian people to pay for the building and upkeep of the bridges across the country. During his presentation, however, in that other place, the minister responsible indicated that it will cost $60 million to construct the glass window bridge in Eleuthera. As a former member of Parliament for North Abaco, thank you. As former member of Parliament for North Abaco, I'm aware that the cost to the government to construct the bridge to reconnect Little Abaco and Great Abaco, which was lost during Dorian, was in excess of $5 million. And that bridge was opened by the current government, bridge that we built. You know, some sow, some reap. A named Angelfish Creek Bridge, which connects Great Abaco and Little Abaco. Senator Alcides, I'm told by the former Prime Minister that it was so named because a lot of angelfish habitate that area, or used to be in that area one time ago. Now, with these costs, and I heard the mover in this place, the AG, indicate that we're going to operate these bridges through private-public partnerships, or now you say you may. You say you may. Well, I'm not going to go to the Hansard to find out what he said, whether we may or not. But you can say how are we going to build these bridges through public-private partnerships, and then the investor, because the government does a part, the investor does a part, and the public does a part, right? That's how it goes. Public-private partnerships. There's the public, the government, and then that forms the partnership. But investors don't normally invest where they can't reap from their investment. And so it's going to be interesting to see how, through a public-private partnership, the government will recover an investment, or an investor will recover his investment, particularly when we look at the glass window bridge, which will cost, well, first out the gate, $60 million. And we know when you start these major projects, change orders come to the tune of millions sometimes. You know, we determined to spend 1.8 million on the hurricane shelter in Abaco. It's now, through change orders, is up to 4.5 million. Something that is almost inexplicable to me. Without a roof, because that caved in. and ain't nobody saying nothing as to why these change orders have come about. And so we're wondering out loud on this side whether or not that bridge in Eleuthera, the glass window bridge, will exact a toll, the same as the Paradise Island Bridge, the Sidney Poitier Bridge, to go to Paradise Island. Madam President, the Bahamian governments, not this one, have generally been very bad at maintaining its property. We've not been good at maintaining property. Government buildings, inclusive of schools, are reminders of how bad we've been. All of us. Been very bad. At the end of every school year, and I use schools as an example because that's always before us, both governments have suffered from this. We find ourselves almost ready to open the schools, and contractors still trying to complete repairs. I would suggest that we perhaps set in place maintenance teams that will take care of the minor stuff year-round, and at the end of the year, when the children are on break, if there is need for repairs, major repairs, then you contract someone to do that if the maintenance team is unable to do that. But we look at our streets, we look at our roads. In Central Pines and Abaco, I spent the lion's share of my time away from the Senate in Albuquerque, North Albuquerque, people are pouring concrete on the roads because that's how bad the roads are and in need of repair. And so, that's a complaint we're getting all across the country pertaining to roads and the upkeep of roads. Costing Bahamas a lot of money. Chassis and tires and the like. You ride down Carmichael and like you're in a roller derby. You all can't say nothing, let me talk. You're a nice car, right? It's like a roller derby. And so I don't know if we can look in the future at farming out all these things. Like making an authority perhaps for roads. I don't know. You know, I don't know what the solution is. Make an authority to look at and with public-private partnerships, but then how do you exact repayment to these private investors? Because we're not good at doing these things. We're not good at doing these things. And so with those few observations, Madam President, I thank you for your time and for your attention. I rest.
Thank you, Senator the Honorable Darren Henfield. As many? The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Ryan Pinder.
Thank you, Madam President. I just rise to wrap up the debate regarding the Bridge Authority Amendment Bill 2024. And I thank the other side for their concurrence and support on this important piece of legislation and an important piece of legislation for the people of Eleuthera. One question was raised in the context of the expenditure that a bridge like the Glass Windows Bridge, for example, will take. How do we look to incentivize private investors to join the government in a PPP framework, if that's the avenue that is chosen, or we can combine the choice between concessionary financing as well as PPP arrangements. Needless to say, we will accomplish that by way of not imposing a toll to cross the bridge. Okay. That was made clear in the other place, and it's now been made clear in this place. There are creative mechanisms, especially with an island that is as growing as quickly as the island of Eleuthera and attracting the amount of economic activity that it is attracting, to be able to have successful financing PPP arrangements. But I encourage the good senator to pay attention as we do this. Because we are the government. We are the government that came to office with a debt to GDP of 101%. That the other side said that we couldn't manage. You know what that debt to GDP is in 3 short years today? It is from 101% to 76%. 76%, despite the strong headwinds that caused them to have a snap election. Madam President, you know what the deficit was as a percentage of GDP when we came to office? Listen, guys, you know what that was? 13% when we came to office, wow. Madam President. 13%. Mike, I think that may have been the highest we could remember. I remember. Right? You know what the deficit is today? You know what the deficit is today? The deficit is 1.3%, down from 13%. That's a mic drop, Madam President.
Put that again.
That's a mic drop. Wow. So, Madam President, the proof is in the pudding. Through the leadership of my good friend, Senator the Honorable Michael Halkitis, and the Minister of Finance, Prime Minister Philip Brave Davis,
Working man.
We will cause it to happen and get done. There will be no tolls on the bridge. We will be able to finance the project, and we will have a new Glass Windows Bridge.
Yes, sir.
Madam President, I move for the second reading of a bill for an act to amend the Bridge Authority Act.
We can show you.
It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a second time and committed. A bill for an act to amend the Bridge Authority Act. As many as in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. Order the bill be read for a second time and committed.
A bill for an act to amend the Bridge Authority Act.
Further second readings?
There are none at this time, Madam President.
Senators, I'd like to proceed with conducting the business of the Senate, please. Thank you. Committee of the Whole.
Madam President, I move that the Senate do now resolve itself into a committee of the whole with the Vice President in the chair.
Is there a seconder? It has been moved and seconded that the Senate do now resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole with the Vice President and Chairman of the Committee of the Whole in the chair. As many as in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The motion is carried.
Committee of the Whole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, with respect to a bill for an act to amend the National Crime Intelligence Agency Act to provide for the establishment of the National Crime Intelligence Agency Commission, its constitution, functions, and procedures, and for matters connected therewith, I move that the long title of the bill be agreed.
Is there a seconder? Second. It has been moved and seconded that the long title of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose say nay. The motion is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the short title of the bill be agreed.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the short title of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose say nay. The motion is agreed. The short title is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that clauses 2 through 19 of the bill be agreed.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that clauses 2 through 19 of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose say nay. The motion is agreed. Clauses 2 through 19 of the bill are agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I now move that the fifth schedule and the sixth schedule of the bill be agreed.
Second.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the fifth and sixth schedules of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose say nay. The motion is agreed. The fifth and sixth schedule of the bill are agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I now move that the bill be agreed in its entirety.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill be agreed in its entirety. As many are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose say nay. The motion is agreed. The bill is agreed in its entirety.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, with respect for a bill for an act to amend the Bridge Authority Act, I move that the long title of the bill be agreed.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the long title of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose say nay. The motion is agreed. The long title of the bill is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the short title of the bill be agreed.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the short title of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose say nay. The motion is carried. The short title of the bill is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that clauses 2 and 3 of the bill be agreed.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that clauses 2 and 3 of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose say nay. The motion is agreed. Clauses 2 and 3 of the bill are agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the bill be agreed in its entirety.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill be agreed in its entirety. As many are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose say nay. The motion is agreed. The bill is agreed in its entirety.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that the President do now take the chair.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the President do now take the chair. As many are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose say nay. The motion is carried. Madam President will now take the chair. Madam President, I beg leave to report that the Committee of the Whole has examined both bills, having made no amendment thereto.
Honorable members, the Vice President and Chairman of the Committee of the Whole has reported that the committee has examined the bills, having made no amendments thereto. Third reading and passing of bills. Chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Michael Halkitis.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move for third reading and passing of a bill for an act to amend the National Crime Intelligence Agency Act to provide for the establishment of the National Crime Intelligence Agency Commission, its constitution, functions, and procedures, and for matters connected therewith.
It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a third time and passed. Sorry, is there a seconder?
Yes. Second.
It has been moved and seconded the following bill be read a third time and passed. As many as in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion is carried. Order the bill be read a third time and passed.
A bill for an act to amend the National Crime Intelligence Agency Act to provide for the establishment of the National Crime Intelligence Agency Commission, its constitution, functions, and procedures, and for matters connected therewith.
Order this bill do now pass and the title thereof declared to be National Crime Intelligence Agency Amendment Act 2024. For the third reading of bills.
Madam President, I move for third reading and passing of a bill for an act to amend the Bridge Authority Act.
Is there a seconder? Second. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a third time and passed. As many as in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion is carried. Order the bill be read a third time and passed.
A bill for an act to amend the Bridge Authority Act.
Ordered that this bill do now pass and the title thereof declared to be Bridge Authority Amendment Act 2024. For the third reading of bills.
There are none at this time, Madam President.
Consideration of House amendments. Resolutions. Discharge of select committees. Notices for future meetings.
Madam President, I wish to renew all notices in the name of the government.
Orders for clerk. Adjournment.
Madam President, when I move the adjournment, I will be moving that the Senate do adjourn sine die. But with your permission, Madam President, I believe that one of our senators wanted to just say a few words in farewell to Senator Lightburn. And with your permission, if we could allow senators who wish to do so to have 2 minutes or so to so do. Thank you, Madam President.
Leave is hereby granted for all senators who wish to have a short greeting.
Good afternoon, Madam President. Good afternoon, all. Thank you very much, Minister and Leader of Government Business in the Senate, and thank you, Madam President, for the opportunity. I just wanted to briefly bring our remarks to our great colleague, Senator Quintin Lightbourne, who have done us well, I think, in this chambers from his appointment. He is a very active member of the Senate and of this Davis administration, and I wish him Godspeed and all the blessings of his new appointment, and I know that he will continue to do our country well in his future endeavors at the IDB Bank. Madam President, I would also like to bring condolences to the various families who have lost a loved one. Our next good Senator Maxine Seymour and her family. I would like to say condolences to you and your family, Senator, and also to our good, I would say, soon-to-be colleague. He's one who is in training, I would say, Rashad Flowers. I would say condolences to you on the passing of your father. And to the family of the great legendary Darrell Miller, someone who I think most Bahamians know all too well for his great character on as a radio personality and a show host and a journalist in our Commonwealth. And Madam President, I think we can all agree that we have lost a good one, but one who has taught many and who left a lasting imprint on many of us. Like a few senators said previously today, everybody would definitely miss Darrell Miller when it comes to election roll call on D-Day. And no one will forget his historical moment when unfortunately we lost the first straw market on Bay Street. That was a very dramatic coverage by Mr. Miller. And I say condolences once again to the families, and thank you very much, Madam President.
The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Barry Griffin.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I just stand for a few moments to express my well wishes to Senator Quintin Lightbourne. I've already spoken to him personally, but I'll just speak here in this place so that it's on the record. But I've known Senator Lightbourne since we were both in high school, from our junior achievement days, both competing for the exact same things, the awards, the trophies in junior achievement, to being friends throughout college, and now as adults, having entered the political world together at the same time. I remember when we both found out that we would be appointed senators, we were extremely happy for each other because both of us had been working toward this goal at the same time. And so it's been a particular honor and privilege for me to having served in the Senate with Quintin, who, like I said, we've known each other from we were boys. And so to see him at this stage in his life, I'm very proud of him and happy for him. I've expressed to him that I'm happy for his appointment in Washington, D.C. The minister and I had an opportunity to see him in Washington, D.C. recently, thriving and, representing the country and, in fact, representing the entire Caribbean. And so very proud of Quintin. We have a small group of friends who were able to get together a few weeks ago to congratulate him. And he let us know about the pending birth of his daughter. And so we're all very excited and happy for him. So just wanted to put that on the record to express my sincere happiness for him and all the well wishes and success for him in his new role. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator the Honorable Barry Griffin. Chair.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam President. I think all other senators in speaking today were able to offer their congratulations and well wishes. And so right before I move the adjournment, Madam President, I want to join our colleagues in expressing condolences to the family of the late Senator Naomi Seymour, who served in this place. I did not know her personally, but from what I've heard about her, she was strong-willed, a woman of great conviction and a fierce warrior for what she believed in. Also, condolences extended to Mr. Flowers on the passing of his father, Senator Seymour on the passing of her father-in-law, and all the others who were mentioned by senators. We share in their grief, and we offer our prayerful support. Madam President, I offer condolences on the passing of the great Darrell Miller. I remember appearing on Darrell Miller's show. I think he had the midday slot many years ago. I think I was Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, and we had presented the budget. And he says, well, come on Darrell Miller's show and talk about the budget, right? I sat down in the chair. The first question Darrell Miller looked at me and says, Mr. Alcides, there's nothing in this budget. That was the first question, first time on the radio show. There's nothing in this budget. So I had to go through and talk. This is back in 2002, right? Back in 2002. So we had a good conversation. He was very forthright, but also very, very generous to a newcomer at the time into that field, you know, going speaking on those radio shows. I also want to join other senators in bidding farewell and best wishes to Senator Quinton Lightbourne, and to publicly thank him for his contribution to the Senate. As has been said, he was always ready, and more importantly, he was always willing to contribute here. And many times I had to call on him when I was otherwise occupied. I would say, I need you to go this way, I need you to go give this presentation for me. I have this conflict, can you go this place for me? And he was always willing to do it. He was someone you could call on. When the vacancy in our rotation came up for the alternate executive director and the conversation began about who we would send, we wanted to send somebody who had the intelligence, who had the experience, who had the resume, but also who had the personality, who could represent, and someone we felt who could make the Bahamas proud. Someone who we felt had a future and who would be willing to come back and use what he would have learned and gathered in that assignment to help with the development of the country. And so Quinton was Senator Lightbourne was a natural pick. We know he'll do well. He's been doing well so far. And what I don't think it has been said in the public domain is the alternate executive director. He'll serve in that capacity for 2 years, then he becomes the executive director. And so very, very important position. We look forward to his excelling in that position and coming back and giving the Bahamas the benefit of all his experience and what he would have gained. So all the best to him. We know he will do well, and that's why we chose him. And so, Madam President, with that, I move that the business of the Senate at its rising do adjourn sine die.
Is there a seconder? It has been moved and seconded that the Senate at its rising do adjourn sine die. As many ayes in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. Final adjournment.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the Senate do now adjourn.
Is there a seconder? It has been moved and seconded that the Senate do now adjourn. As many ayes in favor say aye. Aye. Those who oppose say nay. The motion is agreed. The Senate stands adjourned sine die.